Hello guys, welcome back to another training video. My name is Szilard and today's topic is gonna be functional threshold power. I briefly talked about functional threshold power in previous week's video, but today we're gonna go a little bit more into detail and I will explain the definition, a couple of training methods and so on and so on. So without further ado, let's crack on. So what is functional threshold power? It is the highest average power an individual can sustain for 1 hour. When we talk about functional threshold power, we use watts to express a person's FTP. So why are we using FTP in program design? Using functional threshold power gives us the opportunity to personalize and specify intensities, which makes training a lot more efficient. Besides that, training with FTP values doesn't require a laboratory environment. All you need is some sort of an equipment which has a power meter built in. That can be a bicycle fitted with a power meter, it can be a watt bike, a rowing machine, a ski urge, anything which has a power meter built in. With FTP we can also easily measure progress, so over time ideally you would see improvement in your performance based on your FTP values. Before FTP became the gold standard for measuring progress, the lactate threshold was the go-to method, but because that requires a laboratory environment where you have to take a blood sample from a person every few minutes and then analyze that, that makes it quite impractical, and this is why FTP took over and became now the #1 method to measure progress. In order to effectively train with functional threshold power, you're gonna have to establish what is your current FTP. In order to do so, you're gonna have to run a few tests. One of the most common tests is the 20 minutes FTP test, which can be performed outdoor and indoors as well. If you choose to run the test outdoors, it is recommended that you choose a road between a 2 to 4% gradient, because that will require you to engage more back and glute muscles, so you will get a more realistic power value. Before you start with the test, make sure that you warm up. You're gonna have to spend about 20 minutes with light pedaling, mix up with some sprints, harder efforts as well, and then you can move on to do the main test. Now when you do the main test, you're gonna have to make sure that you push as hard as you can sustainably for 20 minutes. Don't blow up on the first minute, because then you're gonna get a really high reading in the beginning, but you're gonna fatigue out and your power is gonna drop towards the end significantly, and it's gonna be an unrealistic value. So try to pace yourself, push hard, but sustainably hard. Once you completed the test, make sure that you're going to stay on your equipment, be it the bicycle, rowing machine, whatever you use, for another 15 minutes and allow your body to cool down. Light pedaling, light rowing, bring the heart rate down, and then don't forget to stretch at the very end. Based on the desired outcome of the session or the training plan, we are using different training zones and the corresponding FTP values to specify intensity in an individual's training. So if you look at the diagram, you can see that zone 1 would be active recovery, which is less than 55% of your FTP. Zone 2 would be endurance, which is between 56 and 75% of your FTP. Zone 3 would be tempo, which is 76 to 90% of your FTP. Zone 4 would be lactate threshold, which is between 91 and 105% of your FTP. Zone 5 is VO2 max territory, which means that you're working between 105 and 120% of your FTP. Zone 6 is anaerobic capacity, between 121 and 150% of your FTP, and then zone 7 is neuromuscular, which means that you're working over 150% of your FTP. It's probably worth to mention that you will be only able to work maybe for a few seconds in zone 7, as your body will fatigue extremely quickly. Besides choosing the right training zone, you're gonna have to make sure that you pick the right frequency as well, and then you set the correct work and recovery intervals as well. You have to remember that over time the body will adapt to the stresses it was exposed to, and therefore you're gonna have to make sure that you apply the principle of progressive overload in order to push your body with each session a little bit further. In order to do that, you're gonna have to increase the frequency of the workouts or manipulate the time intervals in a way that it increases intensity, thus introducing new stresses to the body to enforce adaptation and improve performance. There are different training methods if you want to improve your FTP, and one of the most commonly heard about is the sweet spot training, which means that you're going to be using between 84 and 97% of your FTP when training. Don't forget to aim for a 2 to 4% gradient if you're training outdoors, and then you can start your training with 3 times 8 minutes intervals with 4 minutes rest in between and work your way up, and then you can introduce longer intervals like 3 times 10 minutes with a 5 minutes rest in between them. Another method is a threshold climbing workout, where you're going to be working between 100 and 110% of your FTP. There are different intervals you can try. You can start with 3 times 10 minutes with 5 minutes rest in between, work your way up to 3 times 15 minutes with 8 minutes recovery work in between them, and then push it even further, 2 times 20 minutes with 10 minutes recovery work in between them. When we talk about recovery work, we mean light pedaling at about 60% of your maximum effort, something between 90 to 100 RPM, just to keep the muscles nice and warm. The next method is the time trial pacing, where you're going to be using 105% of your FTP, and you're going to complete 4 times 6 minutes rounds with 4 minutes recovery in between them. I have mentioned here 3 bike-specific training methods, but if you do a little bit of research, you will find many other approaches for all the different sports out there. Because we're already talking about power, it is probably worth to mention that there are other tests you can run in order to build your power profile. One of these tests, which is often conducted, is the 5 seconds peak power test, which means that you're gonna go all out for 5 seconds, and that power measurement will be taken, and that power value will be part of your power profile. The next test is the 1 minute power test, which means that you're going to have to pedal for 1 minute as hard as you can, and that is really good to testing your anaerobic capacity. Another test which is included in the power profile is the 5 minutes max power test, which is excellent to test your VO2 capabilities. If time is not a concern for you, the FTP test can be done over 1 hour. The advantage of doing it over 1 hour and 20 minutes as well, then you will have 2 different data which you can later compare. If you take the result from the 20-minute test and multiply it by 0.95 and then compare that number to your 1 hour test result, then you can see if the numbers are closely matching. That means that you can actually sustain your functional threshold power over 1 hour with that 5% loss. It also tells me that your pacing is excellent. If there is too big of a difference between the 2 results, that actually tells me that you're going too hard on your first 20 minutes and you are not capable of sustaining that power towards the end of the 1 hour. And now, just to summarize the video, FTP is the maximum average power an individual can sustain over a 1 hour period, which is an excellent number to use to specify and individualize intensity when it comes to training either yourself or an athlete. FTP tests can be run indoors and outdoors. It can be done on a bicycle with power meters, on a watt bike, on a rowing machine, on a ski erg, any equipment which measures power. After completing your FTP test, it is highly recommended that you do another test in a couple of months, just to make sure that you get the new numbers, see if you're progressing, and they also give you the opportunity to tweak your training plan and set out new targets. If you have any questions regarding this topic or about training in general, please don't hesitate to let me know. You can do so either in the comment section or you can hit me up through my website. I have left the link in the description below. If you like the video, don't forget to hit the like button, share, comment and subscribe to the channel. I will be back next week with a new video. In the meantime, take care and stay safe. Ciao!